So hey everybody, I am here today with Scott McElree, who is the Chief of Police for the Quakertown Borough. Scott, thank you so much for allowing me to come talk with you today and sharing with the community. So before we even start, and I start asking you questions, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and how long you've been with the borough and what else you do?
So I've been with the borough since 2004. I came here from the lower part of Montgomery County after 30 years with White Marsh Police Department, and came back up here for a second career as the police chief. And so I've been here since 2004. 2007, I also became the borough manager. And so I guess it's been, 16 years that I've been here. It's been a great opportunity. It's a great community. I've got a lot of support from persons like you. And so we've got a great police department. I've got a great borough council that supports the community, supports the policing efforts. And so we've had a lot of impact on the community, and we're really proud of it.
As you should be, absolutely. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about today, is kind of give everybody an idea of where we are now with COVID and where we were pre-COVID back last year at this time. Are you finding, let's start with just the community in general, are arrests up, are arrests down? Is there certain categories that are more so than others?
So we're seeing a downtick in, let's say, criminal activity, criminal arrests. We attribute that to people in the beginning, back in, let's say, March. People were very much more conscious of going outside. They were self-quarantining.
Criminals doing that too.
They were too. Yeah, they were too. And we saw a downtick in the statistics for, let's say, even drug overdoses and things like that. So we thought that that was a good sign that people were obviously being responsible and whatnot. Since then, we've seen a slight increase. So people are starting to get back to what I would be, or I would consider a regular, normal way of life. And we're starting to see some things come back, some of our statistics. But an example, I just pulled the last police report for the month of October. And so an example would be, and I'll start with the most heinous crimes. So they're called Part 1 crimes in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And it's reported to the FBI. It's called the UCR report, the Uniform Crime Report. And so each month we report that to the state, and the state reports it to the FBI, who collects all of the data. And an example would be the Part 1 offenses, as I said, the 7 most heinous crimes, everything from homicide, rape, robbery, assault, burglary, things like that. Just to give you an example, so year to date, October 31st, this year, we've investigated or had reported to us 105 Part 1 crimes, down from 153 this time last year.
Okay.
So probably the reason for that would be March, April, May, June, and then we've started to see again an uptick. So that's overall. We're kind of I'll give you an example. So assaults, which would be serious assaults, not just an harassment assault, but serious assaults. For the month of October, we were showing 24 this year and 25 last year. So we're about back to where we were with some of those offenses. But in the beginning of this COVID, we saw a downtick. I think it was new. They were trying to be responsible. They were scared. There was more fear.
Right.
And they were self-quarantining. And with that, so we saw a downtick in even things like traffic accidents. People weren't driving.
Right.
So those kinds of things we saw, as I said, a downtick or a downturn in our statistics.
Now, what about kids specifically? How are, schools closed and all of a sudden the kids were at the beginning, and we talked to Dr. Harner last week, and he'll be part of this as well. We talked about how they were at the beginning, they couldn't mandate that they had to do their work, and so a lot of kids, when this first hit, went, "Oh, I got this summer off now." And so, did you find that they were getting in more trouble? Were their parents I know a lot of our kids, their parents were making them stay home at the beginning, but now they're out and about again.
Yeah, and I think that's factual. I think in the beginning we saw that there were less contacts with some of the kids or the youth, and now it's pretty much back to normal. We still have, I mean, we are experiencing groups of kids hanging out at the parks and things like that, and I think part of that is that probably the science that's being projected out there about COVID is if kids get it, they don't really get it,
right?
And so they can still carry it and they can carry it home and those kinds of things. But I think that for the most part, the kids are back to a regular way that kids are. And
are you finding that they're behaving better though? Or, because I know now we've got, we're finally back open again, at least somewhat. And then the skate park, seeing them all over there too. So they've been there a few days a week. Are we keeping them out of trouble, or are they just during those hours are we keeping them out of trouble?
Well, no, I think that it's pretty much the same. We haven't seen a rise in issues with kids or youth, and so I think it's pretty much status quo. There are a few. I think there's a few reasons for that. So we've had to drop now in the borough, which I think has had a profound impact on kids, and your efforts have been great. So, we know that if we look back at the social science of this thing, which I am by no means a social scientist, but we look back at that and we see that kids need to have direction, they need to have discipline, they need to have relationships, and they've got to be responsible relationships. And I think that there's a lot of positive influence in this community in that direction. So we have the drop. We've got Pastor Dave and all of his efforts down at the free fall, which I think really does impact our youth. And so I think that we are a special community when it comes to that. So I didn't anticipate an increase, let's say, in juvenile crime. It's pretty much status quo, and we have a few, like every community does. You have a few of the youth that will get into trouble, more serious offenses, but that's few and far between. So we're really happy with the way things are going.
Well, and I can say we had an incident a couple weeks ago that I had a concern there was going to possibly be a fight that was going to break out. So before it even occurred, we contacted you guys, and you were out there immediately. And I knew the two kids, and I said their names, and you guys knew who the two kids were, and they are regular offenders, unfortunately. And it was just knowing that we called and you immediately came and you kept our other kids that didn't want to have any dealings with that young man safe.
Good.
So, and the officers were great. There were two of them that came. So very responsive. So thank you for that.
Sure.
The only other thing that I wanted to ask you about was, well, two things I think, is the youth panel. So some people don't know about that, but that's another opportunity it's a kind of helping the kids before they have to get arrested and actually go to jail. So tell us a little bit about what might prompt you or warrant them to go to a youth panel versus just being arrested.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you brought that up. It's. Let me just backtrack a little bit. So the youth aid, there's two different types of diversionary justice, which is the kind of plan or group that these things fall under. So we have the YAP, which is YAP, and we have the CAP, which is CAP. And Quakertown was one of the first communities to engage in this diversionary justice. And to the credit of our prior district justice, Judge Roth, was very instrumental in pushing this forward. And then, of course, our current judge, Judge Geyer, supports this 110% as well. And the real truth is these kinds of programs wouldn't work without the support of the judges and the support of the community. So what they are is for certain classified or identified incidents or crimes, is that they then can make the diversionary justice an option.
Okay.
So what it does, it keeps kids out of court, keeps adults out of court. Now the youth aid panel is kids under 18, and the CAP is for adults, people 18 and over. So it's a panel of community members. We have several panels just because of the numbers that we have. So we have several panels that volunteer. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
And so we have
All
several. Good. Excuse me. Sorry. So we have several panels that they get assigned. In our particular case, the youth aid program, children who that have contact with the police. If there's certain offenses, minor offenses, obviously we're not going to put anybody before the panels that it would be a serious crime. For instance, a serious assault or murder or something like that wouldn't go before a panel. But it's the minor offenses. It's the maybe the first time retail theft, or even as minor as curfew. Those kinds of things that we put before the panel. There are reasons for this. One is that it's kind of like everybody should get at least one break, if it's not a major thing.
Right.
So it's for first-time offenders. They get a break. It keeps them out of the criminal justice system, so they don't get let's say, a mark for the rest of their life. And in a lot of cases we have, the last I spoke to the officers in charge of the youth aid program, is we're in the 58 percentile or so of success, where we don't see recidivism back. So it's successful. We're helping these kids. A lot of times they just need discipline, they need structure, they just need a relationship. Sometimes they don't get that at home. So we actually provide that to them. So I think it's been a great success. It helps these kids out, gives them direction. There's been cases that has been brought to my attention that these kids go on to be extremely productive adults. You know, they get a chance to go to school and they make something of themselves. So we've had this, I think it's been in place maybe 5 or 6 years. Okay. So now we've got kids that were in the CAP program are now in their early 20s, and they're doing well, which is really, as I said, I think it's a great thing. So it saves time, it saves money, it helps kids, it saves kids. So it's a great thing.
And then one last thing that I just kind of want to do a shout out for you, and that people might not know about, is Shop with a Cop, right? Fantastic program. So tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's something that the community can help with, so that we're encouraging a healthy relationship at an early age with the police in this community. Yeah,
thanks for bringing that up. It's been such a rewarding program, and obviously it's a team effort. From the police department. I cannot take credit for it. I've got people here on staff that just do an absolutely tremendous job. They tell me the date and time to show up, and I show up, and they do just magnificent work. Bob Lee, who is our SRO, and Julie Bender, who is the director of finance, and a plethora of other staff members that just make this program so successful. So for those that don't know about the program, it's an opportunity for the police department to give back to the community. Children that qualify, lower socioeconomic families, or maybe families that only have one parent, or whatever the case may be, it gives through community donations. and the help of Walmart's been fabulous with this, is that we make arrangements one night in December. The kids show up with their families, and they actually go out into Walmart and they shop with a cop. And
Cool.
it's usually somewhere about $125 that the kids have a spending limit, and they go out and they buy presents for themselves. But what we see a lot of times is that they actually get presents for their siblings or for their mom or dad, and it's really it pulls at your heartstrings. Every single child that I have been assigned to go out usually take, by the time, it's about 4 hours or so. So you spend about an hour with each child. So the children that I've been assigned that I go out and shop with, it's in that hour, it's difficult to turn them back over to their parents.
Right.
Because they're filled with joy, and they're filled with appreciation. And they really do, they get it. These kids get it. They get it that it's something that the police department is doing for them and their family. And on top of it, then each family gets a gift card to Giant to buy food for Christmas too.
That's awesome.
So they can have a Christmas meal together in the family. And what's really heart-wrenching is it's not heart-wrenching, it's heart-fulfilling, is that we've got the best Santa Claus on the planet. So it's a guy by the name of Steve Kratzer. Steve is the superintendent of our water department.
Okay.
And not only is Steve look like Santa Claus, but some of us think that he is Santa Claus. He's got that magic in his heart.
That's
and
great.
The kids he is so good with the kids. This year we've made some changes because of COVID. So we're still having it. It's still going to be a robust program. And but kids are not going to be able to sit on Santa's lap. We're working through that. The kids can still talk to Santa and have a photo
Give him an
opportunity.
elbow bump.
Maybe an elbow bump or whatever. But he does a great job with it. The kids leave there with Christmas spirit in their heart. We leave there with Christmas spirit in our heart. And it's just a great program. So it's something that the police department, in above police duties, is that we can give back to the community and just give a child and a family a good Christmas.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess my last question, and I really mean it's my last question, is what as a community can we do to help support the police?
Yeah, well, a few things. First of all, this community supports our police department immensely. So we really appreciate that. And it means a lot to us because not to get historic or technical or educational, but there's a guy by the name of Sir Robert Peel. Sir Robert Peel, believe it or not, in the late 1800s, was the first police commissioner of the Metropolitan Police in London.
Okay.
He is considered, believe it or not, this is 1800s. He's considered the father of modern policing. And we still subscribe to Sir Robert Peel's principles of policing, okay? And I think it's the seventh tenet in Sir Robert Peel's list of things that police do, is that he said that the police are the community and the community are the police. So it's not like as if the police department is a separate entity and that we now are the police of the community. We are the community, and the community are the police. And we subscribe to that here. And we know that we can't successfully provide policing to this community without the community support.
Right.
Doesn't say that every once in a while you're going to have a person that we have to deal with that doesn't like the police.
Right.
Because we have to arrest them, put them in jail. Obviously, they don't like us for that. But the majority of our community are great people. They're great to, we serve and protect. I know it sounds corny, but we do. And there's a lot of things that policing does that most people don't think about. They think, okay, it's 2:00 in the morning. They hear somebody at their back door. They pick the phone and they say, I think somebody's trying to break in my house.
Right.
That happens. That's not the majority of policing. The majority of policing is providing every other service that you can think of. So I tell this example all the time, is that there is a woman, I won't identify who she is or where she lives, but she lives in Quakertown at the time, and I think she's deceased now, and she was 92, I think. She lived by herself, and she was cooking, and she did whatever she was cooking, she didn't do right, because she created a lot of smoke in her house.
Okay.
And the house was smoky. So she picked the phone up and she called 911. She lives by herself. And she asked if the police could come by because she needed her window open in the kitchen.
Aww.
And of course, the 911 dispatcher said, well, 911's to stop a crime or save a life, but we'll put it out to the sergeant that's working, and we'll give that the circumstances. So anyway, the sergeant was working, assigned a police officer to go over. He goes over and he opens the window for the woman, and she is unbelievably happy.
Mm-hmm.
He opened the window. She was very appreciative, and he left. Well, about 3 or 4 hours later,
She needed the window closed.
she needed the window closed. So she called back again. The police officer went over, closed the window for her. She contacted me, and she was so appreciative of the police and the police officer. And that's just an example of what police do. We just, we go check on the well-being. We do a lot of things that really aren't necessarily lock up criminals.
Right.
And that's what a community needs. They need somebody to call to say, I don't have anybody else to call. I don't know what to do. And we go over. Bats, and people get bats in their house. Who do they call? They call the police. We go over and, believe it or not, we get bats out of the house.
All right.
That just happened, by the way. So, and the homeowner was so appreciative that the police officer did that. And we don't get any training on bat removal.
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay, so we winged.
Yep.
But anyway, so what we do is we have a great relationship with our community. We appreciate that. We actually we're as appreciative of our community as they are of us, and so that's what we do. We think it's important. We are the community. The community are the police, and so I think that for the most part, the community keeps doing what they're doing, and we keep doing what we're doing, and I think it's going to be great.
We appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time to inform everyone. Guys, I'm sure that if you have additional questions, you can just go ahead and shoot them over to us, and I'll get them over to Scott and find out what else we can do to help. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Appreciate it.